So, Alfie, for anyone who doesn't know you, September 2023, you started with 0 followers, running around Bondi with an iPhone. What I'd like you to do to start with is just tell me where you are now and what has happened in between 2023 and now.
Yeah, so a little over 2 years, which is crazy to think about. I mean, a lot's changed. We've got a team of 40 people. We built a couple awesome businesses, started in fitness coaching, transitioned into business coaching, which seems to be a common trend in the industry. And now the third business is Roll, which is a technology SaaS platform. And I was introduced to a concept very early on, actually when WAP, which is payment processor, is really cracking into the info space, but going a lot broader now, going into e-com and all the other areas. Ended up flying me out to New York after we won this competition. And I remember listening to one of the speakers there. This was back in 2024. And he said, acquire the skill, and then you should teach other people one-on-one. And most people skip this step. Then you should put it into an info product, into a more scalable version where you can teach many and solve the same problem. And then finally, not that many entrepreneurs get there or need to, because info is such a great scalable vehicle, but you can put that into technology. And I love this idea of compounding and solving the same skill over and over again, because I just believe entrepreneurship is problem solving on steroids, and solving the same problems first for yourself. So you acquire that skill, which for me was growing social media and monetizing social media, then teaching other people one-on-one, then putting that into a scalable product or a system, productizing what you've done so it becomes a framework so it can now be applied to many people at once, and then finally moving into technology, which is sort of the exact roadmap which I've laid out. And I reversed engineered where I'd got to at that point back in 2024 when I just scaled Pure Body to a point where it was a 7-figure coaching business. And I'd sort of done the same thing with fitness. I got myself in shape over a decade of training prior to creating social media. And that's a nice caveat that I would say anything you do online, and I think why the success was so great online, has to start from what you do offline. So it was a 10-year, a decade journey of getting myself in great shape, also understanding nutrition, mindset, lifestyle, all of those principles. Then teaching other people one-on-one in a high-ticket coaching dynamic. Then productizing what we do into a system, Pure Body Protocol. And we didn't need to get to technology. I mean, we used some white label apps to scale our coaching product, coached over 16,000 people, but we didn't need to create our own app. Although we did. I mean, Cal AI did pretty well. Sold to me MyFitnessPal for around 250 million. So could have been a nice avenue that maybe we missed the ball on that one. But for me, that's when I transitioned into the business coaching. So it's been a crazy 2 years, but lots of lessons along the way, but trying to stick to that same principle of acquiring skills, teaching other people, productizing the lessons, because when you become the teacher, you become a great learner as well. And then finally, seeing if there is a scalable vehicle like software to put it into.
I love that. I love what you said about entrepreneurship being quite a brutal way of learning. I completely agree. I think it's the most aggressive form of personal development is entrepreneurship or trying to grow a business. I think it's also interesting what you said around a lot of people who go into fitness don't actually understand the business side of things. We've had a number of people in fitness on the podcast in the past. We've had Olympians. We've had people who are fitness coaches. We've had the guy that runs Chalk Fitness, so he does like
we're catching up with him today.
Oh, there you go.
Jake is in the background, it's my housemate.
No way. So there you go, right? So he's been on the podcast, and like what I think is so interesting about the guys that go really far in fitness is that you're right. They have an authenticity where they really train for a long time first, and then they got into like you say, teaching people exactly what to do. And then sometimes if you pivot into business, it can go wrong, right? It can be completely different because it's not authentic to what you started doing. But take me back to your story when you first been training on Bondi. Like you were clearly in good shape back then. At what point did you go, okay, I need to start creating this brand online. I need to go a bit bigger than just videos. I need to start telling a true story. Something that is going to outlive me, perhaps.
100%. Yeah, the story actually started very fittingly with this man here. So we were living together at the time. We'd lived together for about 5 years in total, and we'd always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I mean, I'd always been bouncing around different ideas. I've been in consulting. I've been trying a lot of things on the side and sort of wrestling with that identity of, who I was Monday to Friday versus who I was Friday to Sunday, which I think most young 20-year-olds do, where you want to go with the crowd because you want to fit in. No one wants to be ostracized. So you drink, you party, you do all the similar things that everyone else is doing. But then deep down, you have this gnawing feeling at yourself that there is something more to give, and yeah, just unlocked potential. And I watched as Jake and I, we went together. We'd always been, going out together, partying together. And Jake made this decision start of 2023 to quit alcohol completely. And I watched as he changed his life through quitting alcohol and also committing to post content. And that's when he started Elastiboy, which now almost has 2 million followers on Instagram. I don't know what it is across platforms, but it's a lot more than that. And I watched as he applied a level of discipline in his life that had always been there, but had been covered a little bit and masked by the alcohol, going out, partying, and all of those things. And it, I guess, definitely inspired something in me, but also just the natural competitive nature of being young. Boys in their 20-year-olds, you start to see someone have this success, and you're going like, hold up, like we're cut from the same cloth. Like why not me? And I watched him climb to 5,000 followers very slowly. Probably took about 3 months. And then this one reel went from 5,000 to 250,000 in a week. And suddenly, Bear Grylls, Kelly Slater, all of these big A-list celebrities were reaching out, taking interest in it. And I was like, wow, this is the social currency and the power of social media. And I'd sort of been aware of it, but I hadn't been in it. And we had actually tried 2 years previous, back in COVID, to build our own business, which was cofit.nz. The account's still live. And this live was sort of this account was our attempt at trying to crack into the fitness market. We convinced ourselves it was way too saturated. It was too late for us. We should have done this. We're watching people like Jesse James West blow up. We grew up watching people like Christian Guzman and Lex Little, and these people who had just seen so much success, but we felt like we'd missed the boat. And now I was watching in real time as someone I knew, which was the first time ever seeing it, someone that I actually knew and not only knew, lived with, transform their life through content. And it wasn't until September that year in 2023, so I had to wait all the way 9 months until I decided, you know what, I came back after a big Ibiza blowout for my 24th. And yeah, I think it was a lot of like self-reflection and just being like, okay, like what is really holding me back? And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do a 75-day hard challenge. So for 75 days, gonna kick the alcohol. We're gonna train every day. I mean, I was already incredibly fit. Like coming off the back of that Ibiza bender, I think the combination of probably drugs, partying, and European sun, plus the intensity of workout that I was applying in my life, I would say at the lowest body fat percentage I've probably ever been, but I was super, super fit. But I was like, it wasn't about the physical transformation for me. It was about the internal one that needed to happen. So started that challenge start of September. I decided I'd add one more rule to the 75-day hard playbook, which was going to be posting every single day. And that was the decision that did two things. One, I created Alfie Gets Hard, which is hence the name, after 75-day hard, which is getting more confusing now as I draw further away from that, which was great. And that was super important. And I didn't really realize it at the time. Obviously, the posting and then the virality, et cetera, I didn't know what it was going to become. But it also helped me shift my identity really quickly, because I had to go from that person who was life of the party. I used to go out, I used to spend a lot going out, party, buy, run drinks, be that guy. And I now had to shift to, no, I'm not going out, and I'm posting online, topless pictures and running around Bondi and filming myself work out. So it was a huge identity shift for me. And what really helped is putting myself out there online, because the fastest way to reform and recreate that identity is give people loads of visuals and reinforcement every single day of this is who I am, this is who I am. Otherwise, it would have been a lot harder, I think, to stick with that as well, because there's no way I was going to quit. And what a lot of people don't know is prior to that, I'd actually tried 75-day hard before. I think I got 7 or 8 days in and I was out, and some friends were like, come on, like we're out, we're going to this fest. I was like, all right, whatever. Because I hadn't built any identity around what I was doing. So once I put that line in the sand, and for me that was creating a digital diary of what I was doing every single day, it was so easy to stick with it. And not only that, but obviously in that journey, I managed to amass a lot of followers, which didn't happen until 47 days in. I think I had 1,000 followers. And then it really skyrocketed from there. And by the end of sort of 100 days in of posting, I'd hit 100,000 followers.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. But what I don't think I actually came across you when you were doing that. I've come across you as you've sort of built this ecosystem from that, I guess. But what's always been interesting with your stuff is, like, firstly, it's incredibly well edited. It's obviously aesthetic and lifestyle, but the discipline does come through, and I always love that bond between fitness, sport, and business, because you can almost tell straight away if someone's in good shape. They've got a bit about them that they have a good understanding of why they're fit, the discipline. They're probably going to do well in business, because it goes both ways, right? It's so similar. And I've heard you talk before about documentation versus authority, and they're the two reasons that someone follows you. So you literally showed everyone what you're doing. You were just documenting, like Gary Vee would say, just like show everyone how to do it, how to get fit. This is my lifestyle. And you also added an extra layer there, which I think is your philosophies and your values. It wasn't just, I'm trying to get shredded to show off. It was like, this is my lifestyle. I'm changing my life. Like, follow me for that. And I think maybe you'll agree with me. Most people try to fake that authority, especially in the business space. They don't want to do the equivalent of getting fit first. They just want to be, look at me, I'm amazing. And you didn't do that. You earned it. So I guess my question is, what is the cost of not doing the hard thing first?
Yeah, again, it comes back to that: acquire the skill, teach other people, package it into an info product, tech, like that transition that I've laid out. It's like 4 simple steps, and there's only 4 steps. You can't miss any of them. And what you see is, either people don't acquire the skill or they acquire a half-baked skill. So as an example, for me, if I had acquired the skill of maybe growing the social media but not monetizing it, I think that's still valuable, and I think you can still get a long way with that. But there becomes a point where now the people who could actually benefit from that have to have figured out the monetization part themselves. So you may have to go and teach content to real estate agents or financial advisors or people with existing businesses who have already figured out the mechanism of, okay, I just need attention, and as long as you can teach me how to get attention, I can make money. But there's actually 2 parts, there's this, the growing the attention, for generating that, and then there's the monetization as well. So I'd say the problem with not doing that first, acquiring the skill step, is every other step after that just becomes weaker, and you cap the potential of how far those steps are going to take you. So if it's fitness, if it's not doing that work before offline, it just caps how far you're going to go. I sort of look at it with documentation and authority as this graph. So the whole concept was actually, once I was teaching content at scale, and once Amplify was really growing, and we did an amazing job of marketing and building Amplify into what it was. And when I first started, I was like, cool, people who are going to want to learn from me how to build and monetize a brand, they're all going to be authorities, right? They're all going to have decades of training experience. They're going to be in great shape. Cool, easy. And then as I was doing it, and that was the sort of first people who I attracted. Again, when you post social media, you attract a lookalike audience. So people with similar values, people with similar background, ethnicity, etc., etc. And I started to realize over time, as we reached a broader and broader audience that was less warm and less lookalike to me, there were some people who were earlier on in their fitness stage but still wanted to go online. And I was saying the way I was teaching it and the principles aren't going to be as applicable for that person, because they can't come on there and go, these are 5 things you need to do to get a shredded six-pack, if you don't have a shredded six-pack. So I realized there were really 2 people coming on, and the positioning is incredibly important, because you and I could say exactly the same thing, but it's going to land very differently based on our past experience. For example, if I said, this is how to grow a podcast, it's not going to land because I've never done it, whereas you can say that. So depending where you are, you need to either understand if you're an authority, which is someone who is in the have done, as in you've built up a wealth of experience behind you. And that's normally time dependent, or it could be some level of credibility in terms of certification, or you've established some level of impact in your life or your clients' lives. A trainer doesn't have to be in insane shape if they've had 10,000 transformations, because all of a sudden the transformations become the social proof of their authority. Now, the flip side of that is in the doing, which is the documentation. And in the documentation means that you maybe aren't there today, but you're in the journey of documenting that. So for me, with 75 Day Hard, it was, I may not have stopped drinking for 75 days, but I can document the process of that discipline, and I can document the mental toughness it's going to take to get there. And each step of the way, you can come on that journey with me. And there's something beautiful about the documentation part that I think a lot of people overlook and go, I'm not ready for social media because I'm not an authority. And the reality is, everyone can post on social media because the documenters are highly relatable. And that means they are highly relatable to the people that are watching them right now. When I started that 75 Day Hard challenge, I was relatable to every other person who hadn't stopped drinking alcohol and still was going out and partying. And now they can live vicariously through my journey. And if you document it in the right way, you will build so much rapport and so much trust because people have watched in real time as you have transformed. And if I take my own journey, why I think my brand has become so powerful and driven the businesses to the point where they've got to, it's because in real time, people watch me change my life, firstly through removing alcohol. Then I taught a lot of my challenges and a lot of my best-selling products were built around, 30-day resets or physical and mental toughness challenges or things to strive for because people live vicariously through that journey. And then they also watched as I documented, as I grew my social media, as I monetized my social media, and they watched in real time as my life began to change, as I began to travel, as I began to hire my friends, put on events, run clubs, coffee and chill, like all of those things happened in real time. And by the time I said, hey guys, I'd love to teach you to do the same, it's like you have all of this pent up demand that has just watched this insane journey over a year at the time, now 2 years. So it becomes very easy to go, hey, you're starting exactly the same position. And funnily enough, a lot of the people that come into Amplify and benefit from our services often are people in corporate jobs who are in great shape, but want a better life, but are worried about what LinkedIn's going to think about them. Like, I understand that avatar so deeply because I am that person or was that person. So yeah, it's just a beautiful connection back to my past self. And that's always who I've tried to help.
I think that's awesome. So you're almost helping someone 1, 2, maybe 3 steps behind you. And I've not really heard someone convey that in the way that you just have, which is that, document until you've done something. So you're showing something, be relatable. And then once you've done it, you can then post as an authority. I really like that. I think it's quite a simple way of putting it that actually makes a lot more sense than other people. And to your point there about mental toughness, and I guess a lot of the people you're talking about now, when they're further and further away from being similar to you, confidence and mental toughness is a massive thing for social media. That's usually, I imagine, the biggest objection to working with you or just posting social media in general. And I'm interested really in how you've dealt with that in your first sort of early post, because obviously you had Jake who was posting and was doing well, so you wanted something, so that desire was high. But there's always going to be that nervousness or worry that someone's going to judge you. And to give you an anecdote, I don't do too much on Instagram, but I put a video on in maybe February this year where I did a half Ironman at my local gym, and my wife videoed it all and put it on my Instagram with like 2,000 followers, and it's done like 15,000 likes, 600,000 views in like not a long amount of time, like what's 2 months maybe. So that's big for me, right? It's huge for me. And the abuse on there was one that was 600,000, another that was a trial reel, so basically exactly the same thing, another 500,000. The abuse on them is wild. And it doesn't stop me because I think I've got past that as a person. Like, we post a lot of the time on LinkedIn, the podcast is growing, whatever, the business, whatever. But my point is that I can so clearly see why people struggle to be consistent, especially in video format, because there is a lot going against you, if I can say that, if you don't want to put yourself out there. There is a lot of worry. So how did you deal with that? And how do you help your clients deal with that if that's their biggest objection?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a conscious decision. I think often the biggest barrier is starting, like actually that first post. And then after like 5 posts, it's like, oh, why won't more people see my stuff? It's like the first, before you post, it's like, oh, I'm worried about anyone seeing my stuff. And then 5 posts in, you're like, why can't I get 500,000 views or whatever it is? I mean, again, this is where a great example of like, if we took putting yourself out there online and not caring what other people think am I an authority or am I in documentation of learning that? It's like, I think now I'm so far in an authority, I find it even hard to relate to people that still have that struggle, because it's just like, I have so much stacked evidence of the amazing things that come on the other side of doing that. Like, at the bare minimum, if you put yourself out there online today and consistently posted, even if you didn't go viral, I guarantee you will have someone in your life reach out and say, hey, I really like what you're doing, or I saw this piece of content, thought it was a good take, or this. There are the quiet supporters that may not make themselves known until it's more successful, but you are changing so many lives just by putting yourself out there and hopefully spreading a positive message. I mean, if you're in the realm of fitness, if you're in the realm of mindset, and that's why I love teaching other people, because through them, I can live out my mission of just making the world a healthier place. And if you're putting that message out there, I guarantee there are people that will be looking, maybe they're not supporting, maybe they're not the loudest supporters. Maybe even some of them are critical of it and even comment and talk negatively. But I guarantee the only negative criticism you're getting, particularly from people your peers, it's a quiet discrepancy which is climbing within them. And I've seen this in real time. I had plenty of friends, laugh behind our back or even to our face and say, like, what are you guys doing? This. They are now all creating content. Like 9 to 5, Horn, like all of these boys we grew up with, Okan's there, Sam Cam's there, like all of these people that we grew up with. And it was never like, I never took it maliciously. It was just, you have this identity of who you are. And for me, that was definitely not a guy running around topless in Bondi filming himself with a tripod. And then you have the identity that you're trying to like smash into the world, and there's gonna be a bit of friction, and sometimes that friction causes some side comments and all of those things. And I think just at that point in time, it's natural. These people at the time, I'd grown up with them, I'd gone to school with a lot of them, so they've known me for so long. And that's why I think it's hardest for people that stay in small towns for a prolonged period of time, have this like localized, people who've known them since they were 14 and they've watched all the evolutions of them. That's why it's really hard for them, because ultimately you don't care about the whole world seeing it. I actually don't think you care about strangers, probably the comments from strangers. You're not as concerned. You're more scared about your inner social group, right? And what that looks like from a social ostracization of the people that you know and love. And I think if you write down the people, this is a good exercise to do. If you write down the people that are really stopping you from posting or doing, it doesn't always have to be posting. It could be anything. The people that you're like, I'm actually really scared to do this because I'm worried about, and write their names down on a piece of paper. Go and reach out to those people, because you'll see the names on the piece of paper and they're people that actually really care about you and love you. And it's like, go and reach out to those people and be like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm a bit nervous. And to be honest, I'm scared that you'll judge me specifically. Wondering what your thoughts was, because I really want to do it. And I feel like this is why I want to do it. I think you'd be surprised at how supportive those people will be.
I completely agree. That's such a good exercise to do. I think you're so right there. Like, a lot of people have never moved out of their town, or maybe even out of the country, and they then don't realize how small that town and that country might actually be when you look back at it, right? You've got to push past something. And I think everyone sees that with their friendship groups and their family, and people are immediately positive for you. But then as soon as you start to grow, they then maybe try and bring you down a bit. And that's when you've got to understand that your environment dictates your performance, and you've got to keep pushing and moving forward and building whatever it is that you're going after, right? I've heard you say this before, that you should die on a hill for something. I quite like that. I think it's quite a good way of doing it. What's the hill that you're dying on right now? What's the thing, the flag in the sand that you're like, this is right, this is what I'm going for?
Everyone's an influencer, whether they know it or not. And the data backs this as well, in terms of everyone has social pull and sway, and we've all got digital identities now. So it's not, and brands are seeing this as well. Like, we deal with a lot of e-com, and I'm very interested obviously in the app space and just the way that brands engage with creators more generally. And they're seeing this. Like, it's not down to how can we get the person with 1 million followers. It's now the micro influencers, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think the social currency is sort of dissolving a little bit behind followers, and it's really down to the individual person, their friendship group, and how much they influence those as well. And what we found is people who have 1,000, 2,000 followers can be just as influential on moving people in that direction. So everyone's an influencer, both from a branding exercise perspective, and that's really important for us, particularly when you're scaling an app, which is reliant on word of mouth, is that it's not so much, you can have a brand exercise that works with big creators and you can have big names in the space, but it's more down to the individual person as well, and how we can amplify our brand through their following and their concentrated social circle. And the other side as well is that everyone has a digital identity, so they will create some form of content. So the TAM for what we're creating, as we've seen from, a CapCut or an Edits, I think CapCut has over 500 million users. Like the user base of these platforms is huge. And we've seen this real skew in the data for Roll of someone who's using it, for the one-off birthday reel that they want to recreate, all the way up to the power user who wants to have multiple team members on there and wants drive access and multiple device and all of that. So you get this real skewed data set, but I think it's just told us that everyone will be creating content. And you and I, we're in that generation that I think maybe are the only people who know what it was like just before social media. I mean, I'm 26 now. When I was 16, really Instagram was coming into its own, Snapchat was coming out, these platforms were coming into fashion. But there was a short period, I still remember playing Snake on a BlackBerry, and that's
Yeah.
The next generation don't know that. They have no idea. We've had to put laws in Australia about when they can get their social media. From day dot,
Yeah.
they've known and they've desired and wanted a digital identity, and they will have one. And, some kids get it from birth, those baby Instagram accounts. By the way, when I have a child, they are not going to have a baby Instagram account.
No, exactly. Yeah, thank God. I blame the mums and dads. What you said just at the start of that around influence. I was listening to my first million podcast this morning with Sam Parr, the guy who did Hamptons, and he had some stats, and he was saying that in the US, it's the most influential place. So they're big on influence, and by that he means there's data to suggest that every one American influences the purchasing of 10 others around them, which is wild. I don't think that's the same in the UK and Europe, maybe not in Australia, but I can understand that we'll get there one day. And it made me think of a guy, a friend I saw a couple of weeks ago, who's got an e-com brand that's just growing. It's going well over £1 million a month and won't stop. And he was talking to me about how he was talking to me really about how everyone's playing a game, whether you know it or not. So whether you're the guy that gets shredded, whether you're the guy that wears really unbranded clothes, whether you're the one that wears brands, whatever it is, everyone's playing that game. And I think that is very similar to what you're talking about, where everyone has influence. You might not know the influence that you have, might not know what you're trying to achieve, but even if you're trying to say I'm the chill, humble guy that drives a 1960s Porsche, I don't need a Lambo, you're still playing a game on some level. You're still creating influence. And I think that point is really important because of how powerful we are going to become as our influence keeps growing. And that leads me really to your point about Roll. I'd love to know the gap that Roll is solving. What is the gap that you've seen? How is camera roll to reel? What's actually broken in the process for creators that you're solving?
Yeah, biggest issue for creators is just time. And that's time as a creative. You're creating for brands, if you're building a business, if you're a coach, if you're an entrepreneur. It's just content creation takes time, and creating good content that's edited well and on trend, it's a time consuming process. And I've gone through many variations to solve this. I've worked with editors overseas, I've brought editors in-house, I've hired Jake's partner who used to work for me. She used to have a shared device iPhone, because actually getting the content from your camera roll to these editors is also a pain point to overcome. Uploading to drives, Dropbox, making sure it's updated content. I was sort of looking at it, and this was back in 2024, and my content has always performed really well from this visual, viral sort of style. I started with a lot of daily vlogs with timestamped and music. Then I moved into this visual viral format. I did realize there is a bit of a formula, whether people like it or not. Again, people will argue about this and be like, oh, well, it's not authentic. At the end of the day, marketing is an A/B test. It's testing two alternatives, and you're looking, did this work, did this not work? Why would you not use the metadata of Instagram, which is all of the posts that are out there and let you go, well, that worked really well. As an example, if I did a half Ironman in a gym, I probably know it's going to do pretty well because it's done well for you. So it's like I already have an indication of this could be on the money. So concept is people were already scrolling, people do already scroll Instagram for inspiration. And I was looking at some of my posts that weren't value as in teaching someone something or something they should save and come back to. There was no real reason for anyone to save it. And they were getting like 40,000 saves. I was like, what is going on here? And I realized my Instagram was becoming a reference point for a lot of other people to save. You know, they were scrolling Instagram, save, and then come back and recreate that piece of content. So I thought, hey, why don't I just shortcut that whole process for you? And I created these CapCut templates. And CapCut is a templating feature. So I brought together Notion and CapCut, and I sold them for $20. And this is a great example of an MVP and what I preach in terms of anyone who's building any business or product. Go and find the minimal viable product to take that to market. So I didn't hire a dev. I didn't even build a website. I didn't go crazy on all that stuff. I literally took Notion and these CapCut templates and I drawed everything together and built looms of how to use them. And I sold them for $20 and we had over 6,000 users. So it was like, great. This is like a real validation of what we're doing. And we were on MRR. So I was like, okay. And then I ended up, you know, long story short, using that as like a front end for Amplify, as like a paid lead magnet to ascend people. But it was a real validation, like there's something here. People clearly want ideation done for you, where it's 20 curated, you know, 5 training, 5 nutrition, 5 mindset, 5 lifestyle. People wanted the ideation done for you. They wanted an editing component done for you. So I was like, okay, that validates it. I began searching for a really good technical co-founder. I knew I needed someone who's like on the cusp of AI, and I managed to find a guy in Austin who just finished up studying at UT, University of Texas, and he specialized in like AI development and software, and he just started his job, and he was wasn't sure about the job with the business he'd started. Anyway, long story short, brought him on board, managed to get him to join the company, and he started building Roll. Now, Roll is like the upgrade of the MVP, where what we do is inside the platform, we have a feed very similar to Instagram of top performing viral content from the top 1% of creators. And that allows you to see all of the ideation of what's going to perform. And we curate that feed based on your onboarding. So in the onboarding flow, we understand who you are and who you create for. And we also analyze your entire camera roll. And we do that all on device. So nothing leaves your device, stays on device, analyze all the different nodes. So we start pulling like, okay, training content, nutrition content, and then a layer deeper, and a layer deeper. And we essentially analyze every video and every frame of every video to determine what you actually have in your camera roll. So the onboarding was really designed to follow if you're working with a videography or editing agency. So the process is like, right, pick your brand fonts, tell us who you are, tell us who you create for, and then upload your B-roll. But in this case, we just scan it. And I've got about 50,000 videos, and it will scan it in 10 minutes, and then you're done, and it will just top up as you go back into the app. Then when you're hitting use template from the ideation we give to you, it will edit an instant preview. So it will actually take your camera roll, slot it into that reference material for each scene, and it matches scene by scene. So the opening scene, you know, someone flexing in the mirror, it's going to go into a camera roll and be like flexing in the mirror, find the best reference material, and edit that piece of content out with you. But the music, the text overlay, and the scenes. And then from there, you have like a normal video editor where you can go in and edit things, but you've got a smart search. So you can actually search and index your entire camera roll and drop things in, which solves what I think are the biggest issues. Ideation, scrolling for content, you know, in Instagram, trying to find a good idea. And then also the editing, scrolling in your camera roll to try and find that perfect piece of content.
Yeah, that sounds ridiculous. That's going to save like 10 plus hours a week for most people, and not only creators but business owners who hate doing content but know they have to, and have a VA who's trying to do it for them but it's not quite right, and they're spending time going back and forth. That sounds like it's going to save everything, right?
Yeah, it's been good. And since that time, honestly, since ideating, and this is just part of learning, like I wish I could have hired Caleb, my technical co-founder, and I wish we could have put it out, you know, the day that I hired him. But the reality is software takes a while. I would say visual content is still super powerful, but it's not the only content you need to create now. Like previously, you could build entire accounts purely off visual. I think you still can, but visual predicates on the idea that you have great B-roll. So we have an education part of teaching people how to shoot great B-roll, and then also what they under index in. So we get a fitness coach as an example, and they don't have any, videos of them, lying in bed or getting out of bed or reading a book. We'll tell them and be like, hey, you're under indexed in this, and for the templates, for them to really perform, you need this type of content. But we're also now expanding into the other formats. So we've got an awesome roadmap for the rest of May where we're bringing in carousels, so same concept.
Cool.
And a cool part of the tech that we built, we can actually drag from Instagram. So if you see something on Instagram, you do see a piece of inspiration, instead of saving it and never coming back to create it, you can send it to Roll and we'll template it on the spot, splitting the scenes, text, and importing the audio, and then you can use it in seconds as well. So
wow.
same concept with carousels we'll be doing. So instead of having to go into Canva, we'll actually pull again with like the photos and replace the photos. So carousels have been performing really well, so we're focusing on those, and then we'll add voiceovers by the end of the month. So voiceover concept would be, you could put in a voiceover saying, hey, woke up this morning, had a podcast, did this, boom, 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 boom. It will then split it by scene, so determine one transcribe it, and then determine how many words per scene it needs to be. Split it up, and then it will build a visual reference of what that scene should represent and pull from your camera. And we can geotag that plus timestamp it, so we can make it really specific, where it would know if you say woke up this morning, it will go into your camera and go, what did you take this morning that referenced being on a podcast? So it can get very specific and tight. As long as the B-roll's there, it will be able to feed it and create the content for you.
Okay, cool. This is a bit I'm interested in. So I'm trying to think how this benefits our clients, right? So we have coaches and consultants. They're not in the fitness space. I don't think we've got any client, maybe one in the fitness space. Most are, they want to be an authority. They do sort of face to cam. They're like, I want to look a bit more professional. Mm-hmm. That's why they've picked podcasts. That's why they've picked LinkedIn, whatever. Do you split out a niche by the content? So for example, fitness creators can do a lot of I'm working out, look at my lifestyle, that kind of thing. Do you split that out by content, or do you say, no, you want to pick content that does well and then hone it into your niche? What's your thinking around that?
Yeah, so it's split out. So the feed will be, again, it's an algorithm. So it'll be based on who you are and who you create for. So someone who creates podcast content, it's probably going to index more in mindset. I think the beautiful thing about fitness is it's very applicable to nearly every niche. You'll see, Alex Hormozi is an obvious one, but he posts fitness content. But Mark Wahlberg posts fitness content. And yes, there are elements of their brand that have been built around fitness, but that's sort of the point, is that if you want to build a really sticky brand, I believe in 6 values, which is fitness, food, finance, family, faith, and fashion. And you have to touch on a little bit of them. Now, you don't have to touch on all of them. And exactly as you said before, around the influence piece of the things that you don't do also speak volumes about your brand as well. So as an example, for fashion, I would say I'm not a super fashion focused person, but the understated look of, as you said, not huge brand logos and plain stuff, even Stephen Bartlett always wearing a black shirt, that says something about him and his brand. Same with Gary Vee wearing hoodies. It says something about Hormozi, great example. Doesn't wear suits in his wife beater, stringer, or whatever it is. That's a statement about him and his brand and his flannel. Again, you don't have to touch on all of them, but most brands touch on 3, let's call it, and they really hone them in and become known for them. And my view is the templates and the style of content that we'll create, particularly with Roll, would be more focused around those values. And that sits a layer above what I call competence and connection content. So connection hits on those values, and that's about connecting and relating with your audience. And then competence is demonstrating that you can actually solve your audience's problems. So the competence side for your clients, by the sounds, is the more articulate part, and that's probably what they over-index in without knowing them, because people who have high IQ but not very high EQ tend to over-index in competence, telling people they know how to solve their problems, articulating it, whiteboarding it, break it down in cool frameworks. That's awesome, but you also need the connection side. And look at Alex Hormozi. He's the guy who is value, 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 value. He's still creates connection-based content. He still talks about his relationship with Leela. He still talks about his fashion choices. He talks about fitness. He talks about food and never skipping dessert. These are all connection pieces that he's realized to build a proper brand. You need both combined, because people won't just buy from you because you're good. In saturated markets, they're not just going to buy from you because you're good, because there are many vendors out there that are good at solving the problem. So not only do you need to be good, but you need to be liked and trusted, and that comes through that connection of values.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I really like the 6 Fs. I think that's I've never heard faith added in there, but I think that's something that everyone should really think of. And the part about low EQ, I think that's also super true. Like, there's a reason people go on to things like podcasts, or they do LinkedIn rather than YouTube, right? Or they get onto YouTube because they've been told they should, but they just come across like a professor. Even though they're not, they're probably young and chill and fun. But as soon as that camera comes on, again, it goes back to confidence that we spoke about earlier. There's that little something inside them that just goes, I'm not sure here. I'm a bit nervous. We've had guys on the podcast who are getting towards billionaire status, and as soon as a little red light comes on, they freeze, or they can't speak, there's so many things that go into, putting yourself out there. I think it's an incredible thing to get into. I want to touch on accountability, and I've heard you in the past. You've put a lot of stuff on the internet, and it's all really good, which I think firstly is amazing, because there's usually something where you're like, oh, this stuff doesn't make any sense, but yours is really cool. It's really it's very very similar the whole way through. And you've said momentum and enjoyment are tied together, and that most people drop off not because they choose McDonald's, but because there's no steak in the fridge. I think that was such a good analogy. So my question really is, how do you build the environment for someone before you build the habit? So I'm thinking now about someone who is listening to this, really wants to go forward, use Roll, start videoing themselves getting out of bed, and really, doing the exact things they should do. Just try, fail, try, fail. How can they put themselves in that environment without leaving the country to just try?
Yeah, again, identity shift. It's got to be an internal shift of who you are. And Emozi says it best, it's not affirmations in the mirror, it's the stack of evidence. But I think it's really hard, because how do you stack the evidence if you don't have the affirmations or the identity yet? Like, where do you start stacking evidence? I do think it is the smallest little habits, and it's the smallest little movements towards it. Even if that's getting a $40 tripod from Amazon and just purchasing that. And if you feel like that's your first buy-in and step towards what you're doing, and then putting that tripod by your bed, so it's the first thing you look at when you wake up. And I now have met so many big creators, like Chase Day in the Life as an example. He creates a day in the life every single day, and he goes to bed with that tripod next to him. Like, we literally shared a bed. We're in Byron, we had a retreat out on the Gold Coast, and we're in the same bed, and tripod by his bed when he goes to bed, and wakes up there as well. And first he rolls out of bed, he puts his phone in. It's almost like clockwork. Like, he's not even awake yet, and he's putting his phone. And you don't see these things as people from the outside world, because content is filmed of the individual. And I think a lot of our marketing with Roll that I've been ideating recently is I want to take all of the great content that's out there, but then I want to have that what's it called, the fifth wall element, where it stops, and then the bells ring, and it's like the production team, and you zoom out and you see all the stuff that's there. And I think it's hard for people to visualize that person that you were just so inspired by, scrolling on your feed, running on the treadmill, sweating with like his hands in his head. There is a 6-foot tripod standing next to him, like dangling over him. And after he finishes this, he gets up and goes, okay, let me turn this on. It is performative. Content is embarrassing. Content is performative. You are performing for someone that isn't even there. But that's the whole point. Like, you can't take that away. And yes, you can wish, I wish my friends would like snip, a couple clips of me when I'm not looking. It's like, but the reality is you can't rely on that. You can't build a business on that. You can't build a brand on that. Get your tripod, film yourself, be performative, accept that you're going to suck a little bit, accept that people are going to judge you for starting. But at the end of the day, if you stay consistent with it, you will get better. And it's a asymmetrical upside bet. And I love this concept. I can't remember who introduced it to me, but asymmetrical upside bets are bets that you can take in your... Actually, I know who it is. It was the founder of Cluey. You know Cluey?
No.
Chloe's like, it's just an insane story. You should look it up after. They're like $100 million company, raised like 15 mil in VC, poured it all into like marketing and influencers. They help with, I don't even know what the software is. It's an app that like helps with students, I think, pass tests or something like that. But the founder of that is super, super outspoken, and I love his content. He's awesome. But yeah, Chloe is the name. Not doing injustice, not referencing him. But the concept is take asymmetrical upside bets. And that is, what are bets that you can take in your life that have very, very little downside? As an example, creating content. Downside, embarrassment from your social friends. Like a few sneering comments. It doesn't go well. It flops. You know, upside, it does really well. You compound the skill that's incredibly valuable. You gain all this attention. You monetize. You build a business. You open an office. You hire 40 people. Boom, 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 boom. Whatever it is. And it's the concept of just asymmetrical upside bets and taking those. I think for a lot of people, if they could zoom out and realize that content is like the biggest asymmetrical upside bet you could ever take in this generation, then more people would do it. And they are. Like, we're seeing it now. And I think, hopefully, I'm having an influence on that.
Absolutely. Have you seen the clip of Leonardo DiCaprio when he's filming Wolf of Wall Street and he's completely paused, ready to go, and then they go action, he goes into character? Have you seen that clip?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Were the comments on there? A lot of them were like, "How cringe is this?" Like, he goes way over the top. And I just thought to myself when I watched it ages ago now, I don't know what people think content is, or movies are, or TV is. Do you think they're acting like that all day and they just happen to get clips of it? It's the same with content, right? Your point there is brilliant about the guy who's got the tripod by the treadmill. It's the same thing, and we get it. But I think that sort of cringe, or you see entrepreneurs who say, "I'm stepping away from social media because I can't get it to work," or "it's not for me." It's just because they're not willing to be cringe enough. We've had Lara Acosta on the podcast before, who's the #1 female creator on LinkedIn in the UK, if not getting towards the world. She's huge, and she said, if it's not cringe, you're not doing it right, because it hasn't got to be cringe to everyone, just to a few people. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like there is an element of performity, but that's, like you say, it's an asymmetrical bet you've put on yourself, and it's unlikely to fail if you keep being consistent. And you know, watching what you're up to, it feels like you're living well within your means. You know, you're reinvesting everything, you're being smart with everything, and you've really used lifestyle. Lifestyle seems like a big part of the content that you put out there. And I think, you know, I'd love to hear your point of view on this. It does feel like lifestyle and that sort of big brother way of doing it, where you're looking in on the wall, fly on the wall kind of stuff, is super interesting. It is super valuable because it gives that trust point much faster than, I'm a genius, I'm an authority, this is going to help you. But I don't know what you think about that.
Again, it depends down to the niche, I guess. If you're like a neurosurgeon, I probably don't care about your lifestyle as much. But
that's true.
If I'm someone that I want to work with and be coached by you, and maybe learn neuroscience off you, it changes the dynamic. And we see that with Em on the Brain, neuroscientist, who's crushing it on Instagram,
oh, cool.
Killing it. And she's got like a really cool content, and I think she is incredibly intelligent, but she's also gorgeous, helps a little bit, but also there's a level of lifestyle. She's always outdoors, she's in the sun. There's like a nice feel to the content. There's a warmth that pulls you in. And I just think that's like really important for people to understand. Like you can't go around life being this like cold genius, and some of us can, like the Steve Jobs of the world, but even he had a pretty bad rap from a lot of people because of the way he acted and treated people. And I don't think many people would have, I think a lot of people potentially would have want to learn from him, but if you'd really like met him, not that I have, but from what I've heard, like he's an abrasive person. And I think there is an element, you're always going to be and have a lot of benefit if you can be liked at scale, and if you can find a way for people to like connect with you on those values. That's really what I just see content as. Like everything's shining a light on what happens offline. It's amplified from what you do offline, and you can't separate that. So as much as it is performative, like you still have to do the work and do all those things offline, and then it's just shining a light on what's already happening.
I like that a lot. I think it does make me think about the fitness. Fitness is such a good content niche because it just works, right? Where you say, to be good on content and you're going to try and sell fitness stuff, you probably need to be shredded, you probably need a tan, or you at least need to be doing something that is relevant to fitness. I think you're right that shines through so much and so well in fitness, but in other parts of content, it can do the same. Like have you ever seen Bella does editing? The girl
Yeah.
from the UK who then goes to LA and she's just edited Apex with these guys on Netflix. Like, I really like that. Just do the stuff and then see what turns out. If someone was listening, Alfie, they've said they've been doing content for a couple of years. It's not taking off. They're not sure what to do. What would be your one sort of tip or bit of advice other than join Amplify or download Roll that would help them?
I would say there is no amount of content when you start out, and arguably into time as well, even with established brands, but particularly when you start out, there is no amount of content volume that would be damaging to your brand, because your brand is not known and your brand does not really exist at this point. So I would say document more and lower the threshold for you to put ideas out there. Content at its core is just ideas. You're just sharing ideas, your perspective, your story, your idea with the world. And if you can test more ideas, the person that tests 365 ideas, one idea per day, one post per day, is going to be less likely to find a winning idea than the person that posts 730 twice per day. So I would take what you're doing and just be like, how can I lower the barrier a little bit to get more ideas out there, but allow myself to focus more on the ideas. The ideation is the most important part, and sharing ideas that are relevant to you, relevant to your audience, and that really break down either competence, solving the problem of your audience, or connecting with your audience. I like biggest gap for most people is they don't know who they're creating for, so they've got like no clear ICP. So if you're just like throwing random content out there, but you haven't defined who you're creating for, I think that's really important. I love the idea that the ICP is just who you were, 2-3 years ago, whoever it was before that change. So for me, like fitness, it was speaking back to that person who was still drinking. For content, it was speaking back to that person who hadn't started content yet. It was so easy to speak to that person because I can relate directly to them and I know everything about them because I was that person. So I'd start there, and then I would ideate based off that. I would lower the barrier for you to post consistently based off that ideation. And I would go competence, connection, competence, connection. So show you can solve the problem, connect to that audience. Show you can solve the problem, connect to that audience.
I love that. I think it's such a good way of thinking about it. And, talking about ideation is as a key part of it makes me think about Hormozy. It's been a pretty Hormozy heavy episode, this one, but he talks about if you're going to script a video and you've got an hour, he would spend like 50 minutes scripting, 10 minutes recording. It's the same analogy as the guy who's got 8 hours to chop down a tree, spends 7 hours sharpening the axe rather than just going at it straight away. I think it's a really good way of doing it. Just finally, Alfie, where do you think content's going in 2026? So we're almost halfway through. Where do you think it's going? Everyone's terrified of AI. They think that they've missed the bandwagon. Where's it going? What do you see happening?
Well, I think algorithm-wise, interest media. I think Gary Vee's nailed it in terms of it being less important about tenure and how long you've had an account for, which makes it even easier for new accounts to surface and do really, really well. So I'd say whoever's posting the most interesting content today will win, whether that's me who've had an account for 2 years, whether it's you, whether it's someone starting fresh, whoever it is. And I think that's important to note because new accounts are rising really, really fast. I would say with the AI, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think there will be a pushback at some point, and I think we're already sort of seeing it, but I think the platforms will have to come down really hard on AI content, which I know they are trying to do, but I think it's hard because it paces very quickly. I would say putting your face and brand out there now is quite important. I think we're in a little bit of a window of time where if you don't do it in the next couple of years, it's potentially going to be very hard for you to compete, definitely on volume, because my face, not that it's known all over the world, but it's known more than someone who hasn't been posting. And I can now AI myself, I can create AI ads, I can do split, I can do all of these things, and I can leverage the likeliness of my brand that's already been somewhat established. So it allows me to compound on that very, very fast and becomes like a very effective branding asset and tool. Like even if I look on paid, my warm to cold, like there is difference. And even now we're using UGC creators, and if it's me versus a UGC creator, like I can see the CPM, and there is a difference there. Whether that's the conviction of a founder or just that my face has likeliness. So it does create these interesting paths to go down with established voices. And I think if you haven't put or established a brand in the next couple of years, it may be harder. But I think there's always going to be new platforms as well. So I'd say I avoid saying it's saturated because I just don't think it is. There's 3 billion people consuming on the platform, and there's, I don't know what it is, it's like 500,000, 500 million rather, creating, or it's probably less than that in terms of really creating full time. So I think you just have this huge delta between the two. And I think it'll be a long time until it catches up.
I really do agree. And your point there, I think it's quite interesting and worth talking about that so many people think about content as, okay, I'm going to put content out there, hopefully go viral, get clients or make money or whatever it is. But they forget that if they've got a business, for example, if you've got an audience, it makes your paid advertisement that you're probably already relying on way cheaper and way more targeted. I think people forget that. They see them as completely separate still. And so I wonder, going forward, because obviously we're seeing Sam Altman, for some reason, getting the brunt of the hate in the US against AI, having, shots fired at his house. And I think at this same podcast I listened to this morning, Sam Parr was saying something like 35% of Americans have said they outright hate AI, will never use it because they just think it's terrible. And I just wonder when we move forward that, there has to be this link between content and business, and people that are relying on ads need to use content, and people that hate ads need to use content. It feels like there's still quite a gap in between, and it's something that people don't quite yet understand just from the business B2B side of things, that they're actually super joined. I think Hormozi talks about how a lot of the stuff that he does is actually organic content that he then turns into paid, and vice versa almost. So super interesting. Where can people follow you? Go on.
I was just going to say, just on that, I think something to take solace in, and anyone listening to this podcast, is it's easy when you're surrounded by the Hormozis, the Gary V's, maybe even myself or you as well, to feel super behind and feel like, oh my God, like I don't have a brand yet. I'm not doing the AI stuff. And it's like, I think it's 19 million people, active users on Claude Code. And as you said, 30% of the US have decided they're just never going to use it. They are the ones that are behind. You, even knowing what Claude Code is, even thinking about these tools and where's content going to be and where should I position myself, you are so far ahead of the rest. And I think it's so easy to get swept up in our own echo chamber of people that are so far ahead of us and just like leading the space that we feel behind. So I take some solace in that, because I do, for sure. And it's a good reminder.
It's a great point. It's a great point, and probably a good place to leave it, because your brand is so built around mental toughness, motivation, stepping out and taking a risk on yourself. And I think you're completely right. We're too obsessed with where we are going forward and maybe chasing the money, but actually we'd all be pretty happy with a bit of freedom and a bit of peace, and we're probably doing better than we already think. I think that's probably a good place to finish for everyone.
I like it.
Amazing. Well, where can everyone follow you, Alfie? Obviously, if they've hopefully already found you on Instagram, but is that still the best place for you? What else are you pushing?
Yeah, Instagram or on YouTube. Or if you want to try Roll, we've got a 7-day free trial. So www.roll2real.com.
Perfect. And you can also probably click that in the link below this podcast. Alfie, thank you so much for your time. I know it's early doors in LA, I think 7 a.m. You're an early riser, but I appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I want to take a second to speak about our sponsor, Pith and Stem, who we are thrilled to have on this journey with us. As someone who is always looking for ways to improve my healthy hustle, Pith and Stem's drop-top desk stood out to me as the best full work-from-home solution on the market. The world of work from home is changing, and a laptop or screen perched on your lap or dining room table isn't enough anymore. It's imperative that we have a solution at home that matches our productivity station that we can have in our office. But of course, homes weren't made to be worked in, and not all of us want a dedicated study. That's why I'm so happy that Pith and Stem created this perfect solution. They designed this desk with both the needs of the professional and their home in mind. It's perfect because it allows me to have a full productivity station that suits my needs and helps me get the most out of every minute that I spend at it, not only so I work comfortably, but that I actually enjoy it. And the best thing about Drop Top, I can close and lock it at the end of the day to keep work and home separate. and it looks awesome on the wall. You can get your drop top desk anywhere in the world from pithandstem.com, or just Google drop top and you'll find it pretty quickly.